Welcome back to the porch of the Grand Hotel at Mackinac Island as we continue with our Mackinac moments around the policy conference. Now a conversation with Michigan Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin. Congresswoman, it's always good to see you. Thanks so much for the time. You've been working on gun legislation, given what happened not only in Uvalde, but of course what happened in Oxford.
Yeah.
That seems now like it was yesterday, but it's now a half a year ago.
Yeah.
You actually believe, though, that you're feeling something different this time, and I think a lot of us just glaze our eyes over and think we're never really getting anywhere or changing anything, but you sense something different.
Yeah, look, I think we're all prisoners to our experience, and being the representative of Oxford and living through that with the community, it is very different to explain to a 17-year-old why we can't get anything done in Congress than to just see it as a theoretical issue that'll die off. I do feel like it's different, though, and it's anecdotal, but it's from who I'm hearing from. There's a lot of folks in my community who are avid hunters and sportsmen. They're very passionate about the Second Amendment, and they've been calling, for the first time, frankly, in my 3.5 years in Congress, to say, like, look, I'm a proud gun owner and I will be for the rest of my life, but we have got to do something. It is literally the leading cause of death for children in the United States. That's insane. So I've been heartened by hearing from those folks, and to kind of crush this idea that you either grow up in a gun-owning family, as I did, and enjoy hunting and shooting at the range, or you believe in some sort of gun safety legislation. And I reject that false choice. And I think that a lot of Michiganders who are reasonable and practical people also say, look, it's not a black or white issue. You can actually do something to protect kids and also enjoy, as a responsible gun owner, your activities.
Where are the nooks and crannies that you think you can actually find agreement? There's been a background check bill that passed the House that's been sitting in the Senate for I don't know how long, and 90% of Americans or more are in favor of that.
Yeah.
And yet, so where are you finding the grooves that you can get something done?
Yeah, well, there's a bipartisan group of us that is working across the House and Senate to get a bipartisan package, which is actually pretty different. And the conversations we're having are on that background check bill. Frankly, you go to a Dunham's or a Walmart right now and you want to buy a weapon, you go through a background check. You are a bad person. You have you have mental issues. You have a domestic violence case pending, and you don't want to go to a background check. You go on the internet and you go to a gun show. And we just want to say, hey, go through a background check no matter whether you're buying a weapon or not. I think there's a real conversation around gun storage. That's the bill that I proposed after Oxford. Has nothing to do with buying a gun. Has to do with being a responsible gun owner. If you have a child in the home, you have to take reasonable efforts to secure it from a child. And if they commit a crime like a murder with that weapon, you can be held criminally liable. Right? This is the Oxford story to a T.
Yeah.
We don't have law that says that right now. So there's a number of bills that are aimed at getting bipartisan support. It won't be everything that everyone wants, but the question I have is, we've been having these school shootings. Some groups will come forward, put forward a big package of bills. They won't pass. And then we all go back to doing what we were doing again. To do that again and again and again is the definition of insanity and expecting a different result. So why don't we try and come together with people like Susan Collins from Maine, a Republican who's sitting at the table with us, to try and come up with a bipartisan package.
Yeah.
Perfection is not the goal, progress is the goal.
I'm also curious about your thoughts about what we're watching happen in the Oxford case where Karen McDonald is charging the parents.
Yeah.
I wondered what kind of long-term impact that approach might have. It's obviously too early to tell, and it hasn't even been adjudicated yet. We're still waiting on that. But I'm curious about what your thoughts were on her approach to this case.
There were a lot of things that were groundbreaking, unfortunately, about the Oxford shooting. A lot of things as we watch Uvalde and watch, I don't think people in Michigan realize that the first responders, the Oakland County Sheriff, the local police, people went into Oxford High School without thinking for 1 minute. They just went in first. They did not hesitate. And you look at what's happening in Uvalde and you just say that community will never be whole again. They will never be okay again. So I thank God for our first responders and police. I think the choice that the Oakland County prosecutor made a brave choice to charge the parents and to hold them this whole time for 6 months. There's not really a ton of precedent for this in law. And she's out there doing this because she feels passionately as a parent and as a lawyer. But this is why I came up with this bill that's meant to undergird what she's doing. And I hope that it sends the message to all the parents out there. If you have a weapon and you let it sitting around, you know your child is struggling, and you buy it for them, you hand it to them, that you can be sitting in jail and hopefully criminally charged. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with that case. No one does.
Right.
But I give her kudos for really striking out and doing something new.
Yeah. Let's move to another issue on which Americans will never agree, which is abortion.
Yeah.
We're any day now, we're going to get a decision issued from the Supreme Court. I don't think it'll surprise anybody if it's the one that was leaked.
Right.
Probably be more of a surprise if it ended up being different from what was leaked, I guess, at this point. But what are your thoughts about that decision as we expect it will be, and what should happen in a place like Michigan?
Well, look, it's always difficult, this idea that our grandmothers may have more rights than our grandchildren is hard to accept. And it's no longer theoretical for Michiganders. We have a 1931 law on the books that makes abortion a felony. And you can be charged up to 4 years if you're a provider. So it's a very real thing that's about to be upon us, and I think that's taken people by surprise. But for me, the whole context of this issue, which I know is extremely personal and sensitive for people, it can be covered in one story that happened to me 2 weeks ago on a plane from Detroit to DC. I get seated next to two strangers, both women, they don't know each other. They brought up the issue because the leak had just happened. One woman, a very senior lawyer from the state of Michigan, and who's worked here her whole career, described herself as Republican and pro-life, staunchly Catholic. The next woman described herself as Republican, pro-life, also Catholic. The first woman said, I don't think I could personally ever have an abortion for any reason, right? The second woman said, I'm pro-life, but I had a miscarriage years ago. My body wasn't responding right, and I had a procedure that technically met the definition of abortion to save my life and to help save my health and to make sure I could have kids in the future, which she did. Both of them described this very personal experience, but then they both said, but I would never tell another woman what she has to do. I don't know the circumstances for other women. And for me, that's the issue, is it's personal freedom, right? It's this ability to be making a decision without government telling you what to do. And I find it ironic that the very people who have been talking about personal freedom for the last few years, personal freedom to make decisions around their own health, are the first ones to turn around and say, you don't get any personal freedom on your health. And I think that, again, practical Michiganders are not looking for women who have been raped, who are the victims of incest, to not be able to take care of that in a way that they decide.
And yet we keep trying to paint in black and white on this. There's so much in the. I'm going to assume, for example, that maybe you're not wild about, say, third trimester abortions.
No, I don't believe in an abortion past viability.
Viability, which is the Roe versus Wade standard.
And that is, to me, a very level-headed, practical way to go about the issue, right? And for me, this is, it's a very personal issue, but before viability, I think that is a choice that women should be able to make.
That's the tricky part in Michigan, though. So we either go back to this 1931 law that outlaws it in most cases, or if that 1931 law is done away with and the governor's successful at the Supreme Court, then what do we have? Just kind of a Wild West for a while?
No, which we don't want. I mean, this is why keeping Roe is to me, and why I voted on legislating Roe v. Wade in the House. It failed just a couple weeks ago again in the Senate. But for me, this is why it should be legislated and be clear. We can't have the Wild West. No one wants that. But we also don't want it, to be a situation where women have zero options.
Yeah. Lastly, I want to ask you about the outlook for the elections this year. There's a lot of complicating factors in Michigan. We've got new districts that we've never really tested before, so we don't really know exactly. It's kind of hard to use but what we do know historically is if the economy's terrible, then the party in power usually pays for that.
Yeah, I think that's right. And there's no issue that I hear more about than inflation. Obviously, the price of gas, which undergirds so much of that inflation, and people's budgets just not stretching the way that they used to stretch. And there's no denying that, and there's no denying that people are frustrated by that. What I hope to do is make clear that we need people who work in the U.S. Congress, in our government, that it's become a place that's a show place for people to gain Twitter followers and yell and throw bombs across the aisle. And hopefully I can demonstrate through what we've accomplished and what we've gotten done at the very micro level and at the macro level, that we can still send workhorses, not show ponies, to the U.S. Congress. So that's my job, but there's no denying that it's a tough year, absolutely.
Congresswoman Slotkin, it's always good to talk to you. Thanks very much for the time.
Thanks for having me.
We'll continue with more Mackinac Moments here from the Grand Hotel and the Policy Conference 2022.